So let's talk about the new anthology series, Secret Level. I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed it pretty thoroughly. Um, for those that somehow don't know, it's an anthology series made by the same people that made Love, Death, and Robots, but each episode is focused on a different video game. I'm gonna cover the first batch of 8 episodes because, as of recording, that's all that's out. So we'll cover that. The first episode, Dungeons and Dragons, pretty on brand for D&D. Animation's pretty good. The characters are underdeveloped, but they're neat. They're pretty on brand. If you don't have subtitles on, it's a little bit hard to understand. So put those subtitles on, and just be aware that the episode kinda just ends. Like, the story ends, and then it doesn't, and then the episode decides to end, and it's like, oh, okay. I would have liked to see, have some closure on that one, but hey, it's whatever. It's pretty on brand for D&D, so it's not bad. It's just, it kind of gets overshadowed by some of the other episodes and how good they are, but this is nowhere near the worst one. Up next is Sifu. It was it was just it was perfect. It was just fucking great. Like it's a good episode. Like it's animated very beautifully with a lot of really good style points. It utilizes basically a more detailed version of the game's art style, while even utilizing some of the game's music and mechanics, building upon everything that the game had already laid out, even if it is just a retreading of the second level. And it tells this beautiful story about a man who basically dedicates his life to something. The problem is every time he dies, he ages. So he spends 60 years of his life in a single night, looking for vengeance. And there's this wonderful little shot at the end where, as he's talking to this dumpling peddler who spent 60 years of her life making dumplings. And they're really goddamn good dumplings. But eventually, as he's, revisiting this place, she figures out that this is the same boy from before. And he asks her, was it worth it to spend 60 years of life on this one thing? And seeing the way that he prepares his chopsticks, she asks him to, tell her if it was. And then we get this beautiful little shot of him reflected in the water, and he's still just a little boy. He's like 12, 14, something like that. So yeah, it's pretty good episode. The New World episode, another solid entry, even if the game it's based on isn't, if all accounts are to be believed. We get some Arnold Schwarzenegger-esque character who's voiced by Arnold Schwarzenegger. He plays this king who is so full of himself and so addicted to his own image that he thinks he could just come to this island and conquer it, and that's it. I get to come here and be the king. That's everything that my life has been so far. So why will this be any different? Unfortunately for him, he doesn't have an army backing him up, and a lot of his skills weren't actually earned. The way he was raised was a lot of the people around him simply gave him victory instead of allowing him to earn it. He was surrounded by bad teachers and things like that. He was surrounded by sycophants. And so that didn't teach him any of the skills that he would actually need to become a ruler, so every time that he challenges the king, he gets absolutely trounced. He picks up some magic items, but again, he cheated his way into getting those, so, he literally cheated his way into power, but still failing to understand it is trounced yet again. This forces him to reflect on everything that he's done, including being an asshole to the one servant that actually survived, and upon reflecting, he decides that he needs to, make it up to his friend, and the way he does this is by developing a skill as a blacksmith, and forging a new arm for this friend of his. And it's a sweet little story about how, nothing is given, it is simply earned. And, you should cherish the people around you, while going through the process of, living your life. It's a pretty sweet little episode. with a nice, you know, relatively complete story. Oh man, oh no, Unreal Tournament, oh no! This one's just bad. This one's really, really fucking bad. So the premise is, some mining robots, one of them gets beat up, and for some reason this turns on its ability to think for itself. And then... oh god. And then it watches the other mining bots, which are not sentient, or I guess sapient might be the word for it, I'm not sure, getting abused and destroyed, like, viciously, which, my god, what kind of resources do you have that that's just allowed, much less encouraged? Anyway, and so he gets ass mad, you know, reasonably so, and, you know, hacks, just by looking at it, he hacks the armrest thing to turn on all the robots, and that makes all of them smart too. And so then the company, somehow wrangles them all up and puts them in a prison so that they can orchestrate a tournament against other people and aliens. Why didn't they just decommission the robots? Or just destroy them? Like, why not, you know, run through some paper trails and do some investigating and, you know, legal stuff and all that to figure out what the fuck even happened? Why do these robots have such powerful networking capabilities? How did the robots become intelligent? And of course, that, you know, they would never be able to answer this, I don't think. But that still doesn't answer the question of how does beating up one of these robots make it smarter? Like, anyway, it's really dumb. There's some pretty cool action in it, but beyond that, it is easily the worst episode out of the bunch. Like, the bad guy even explains the bad guy plan to the robots. We're going to show them the price of rebellion by showing these low lives what they're really worth. And instead of, you know, the plan being decommission them, it's put on a show where they can use their, I guess you could call it charisma, to incite a rebellion. But if the company thinks that these are murder bots, which they would, then why would you put them in a situation where they could just turn sideways and start randomly shooting into a crowd of people? Why would you do that? Oh my god. And it's like, oh, but we wanted to make a good show. Okay, you know what else is a good show? How about televising the destruction and decommissioning of each of these robots? You know, make it a game show or something, like spin the wheel of death! How are we gonna destroy the robots this time? You know, like you could do that, have like a season or two worth of that shit. You know, that's how you can make a good show out of it. Without giving them the ability to fight back and rebel. Like... just dumb episode. Stupid-ass episode. Anyway, like, I could go into more details, but, if you guys want, like, leave comments or whatever asking for a more detailed, deconstruction of the episode, because I don't think I'd be against that. I think it would actually be really fun to deconstruct that episode and everything that just causes it to break apart. Like, you know, how the tech expert, doesn't know how the robot works, and then, you know, gets rid of the firewall chip, or firewall inhibitor chip, which then causes the robots to upload everything into the entire system, because he was working on a computer that was connected to the entire fucking arena that they were in, instead of, you know, a personal computer or a separate computer or whatever. And the tech expert, just presses a couple keys instead of, you know, unplugging the wire or doing... Or calling anyone and giving a heads up. He just presses a button, just, oh no, and that's it. That's how the robots win. Anyway, I could go on, but I need to move on. I need to move on. So what's next? Oh, Warhammer! Oh! Fuck yeah! Oh, that was a good episode. It's probably the second best out of the bunch, right behind Sifu. It's just so fucking good. This is another one that I would actually adore doing a dedicated breakdown episode on. Because there's actually a lot to miss in this episode, even though it's just like 17 minutes of, you know, setup and action. You know, it is barely any dialogue, so, and it's just the progression of moving from point A to point B, and they're not that far from each other. It's really hard to fuck up. There is one issue, mainly the beginning fight scene, where all the Chaos cultists are charging at the Astartes, and, like, the question is, what was your fucking plan there? Like, do you not know what a Space Marine is, or did they just think that overwhelming numbers would, you know, work? Or was it that, you know, the Chaos Gods got it in their heads that they're invincible? So, I mean, there are ways that it could work, it's just, I would like to know why. But the problem that I'm not sure can be fixed was when the minigun was shooting at the Space Marines, and then Titus charges through the car and blows them up. Why didn't the machine gunner turn the gun towards Titus? Like, he just kept shooting at the guy that was sitting behind a shield. It was a bit of an odd choice, but it does allow it does show off how powerful the Space Marines can be, as well as showing how fearless Titus was, because everyone else was taking cover. So, you know, we do get something out of it. It's not worthless. It's not game-breaking or anything. It's just, you know, it's just something that could have used some tightening up. And then, I guess, speaking of the fearlessness of Titus, Titus is in the episode, if you're familiar with the Space Marine games. And the episode is about, you know, is focused mainly on his mentor, and, you know, while they're on this mission, you know, his fears of having, you know, selected Titus for, you know, the Astartes, and, you know, raising a child that never knew fear, because normally that fear is supposed to be turned into obedience, and then that obedience gets turned into faith, which is what is said at the beginning. But Titus never knew fear. And so the fear in Metaurus, you know, the mentor of Titus, the fear in his heart, as we get to see in this cool little, like, demon section towards the end, when a Tzeentch demon is, like, you know, reaching into the minds of the Space Marines and exposing their fears to them, and also using that to, I guess, melt them from the inside out. And we see that Metaurus' fear is that Titus's lack of fear would lead to a lack of caution regarding Chaos forces, which would see him corrupted by the forces of Chaos. But we later see that, you know, when Titus's mind is being invaded, he has no fear. You know, he doesn't fear the demons, he has no insecurities that can be preyed upon. So that fearlessness, you know, is what allows him to defeat that demon. And then there's, you know, just that glorious bit at the end where where Metaurus, you know, realizes he's probably going to die. And he says, our duty is done, it's time to go. And Titus says, not yet, old man. And he puts his helmet back on and gets ready to fight the coming Chaos cultist horde. And then, you know, we see Metaurus, you know, he, like, all that fear is washed away, and he gets to see Titus as a young boy again. You know, like almost like this fatherly figure sort of thing. It's like, oh, thank God, I've done the right thing. And it's also doubly epic because, for, you know, fans of the lore, because they would know that a Space Marine's duty ends when he dies. So Metaurus isn't just saying the mission is complete, it's time to go back to the ship. He's saying, I think we're gonna die here. And Titus was saying, no, we're not gonna die here. I'm gonna save you. And it's like, wow, oh, fucking beautiful, man. Like, there's so much more going on in that episode. I highly, highly recommend that you check that one out, as well as the Sifu and New World episodes. Those are my personal 3 favorites. So yeah, the Warhammer episode is almost perfect. It's so good. And then it gets followed up by something that's less than perfect. The Pac-Man episode. It's not Pac-Man. Uh, I I did not care for it on first viewing, but further discussion with friends and rewatching it has led me to understand that there is a really cool concept buried underneath the bullshit in this episode. Because, like, the funny thing is, this episode was so far removed from anything Pac-Man that it's not Pac-Man. It's like Dark Labyrinth or whatever. And it's like, if it was just that, then fine, whatever. It's a neat little concept thing, proof of concept, and now I want more. Now I want to see the rest of the series. This would be like a an interesting pilot episode or something, But no, it's the only Pac-Man that we get in this is the use of terminology like ghosts, the existence of cherries, and there's a yellow ball that eats things. That's literally it. This might surprise some of you, but Pac-Man actually has lore. Like, there are different iterations, but like Pac-Man has lore in the same way that Sonic has lore, or Donkey Kong. Yes, each game, each television series, etc., takes its own little spin on that lore, but there are certain consistencies. Pac-Man being evil is never one of them. The closest that we've ever gotten to evil Pac-Man, that I'm aware of at least, was in Pac-Man Pac-World 1, where there's a ghost piloting an evil Pac-Man mech so that he can kill Pac-Man and steal his fame. But, like, everyone knew that it wasn't Pac-Man, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't played Pac-World 1. I played Pac-World 2, like, 20 years ago. I need to play that game again, goddamn. Oh, man. Anyway. Like, it's conceptually interesting. It just has nothing to do with Pac-Man. And apparently, it's, like, based on a Pac-Man game that, was announced, like, after the episode came out. So, that makes it a little bit less jarring to see where the studio, like, came up with the idea. But that doesn't make it any less jarring in terms of, like, viewing it, I also, there's some issues with the world building and how incomplete it is. And, inconsistent. Like, also there's some, like, there's a couple things in there, like, why is this the case? Like, why isn't the evil Dotbot making an army of these characters? Why was Ghost Man, Vat Boy, or whatever, why was Vat Boy able to reach into his chest and rip the Dotbot out? Those ribs there, right? You can't really do much on regarding that. Yeah, it's not a great episode. Like, conceptually interesting, it's just separate it from the name that you claim that it has, and tighten up the script a little bit, and it could have been miles better, and it's frustrating and disappointing, honestly, because it could have been a good Love, Death, Robots episode, I guess. Crossfire. That's actually another really good one. The gunplay is pretty damn good, from what I understand. I'm no expert, but, it looked great, sounded great, felt great. And we got some pretty decent characterization in it. It's a little bit hand-holdy with the message, because, everyone keeps reiterating, I'm not the bad guy, I'm not the bad guy, we're not the bad guy either, and it's like, yeah, I get it, okay? The only time that you really needed to say that was, the guy with the briefcase, trying to, like, reason with one of the mercenary groups, saying, I'm not the bad guy, like, trying to be like, hey, don't screw me over on this one. That's the only one that you really needed, to say. like, every other time it just feels a little hand-holdy. And I'm, like, we're not told why the two teams are shooting at each other. We just know, oh, there's something inside of a briefcase that could ruin this company's reputation or something. We're never told what's inside the briefcase. We're never told the nature of, you know, the company or anything like that. And while that would normally be pretty frustrating, I'm kind of glad that they don't here, because by getting more information, that would lead to more, you know, room for direct moral judgment. By not being able to know what's happening, that leaves a lot of room for discussion and interpretation. You know, it allows the episode to focus solely on the characters and, you know, the way they interact with each other and the situation. Which, you know, helps with the whole theme of, you know, everyone has to find a way to justify their actions to themselves, even the most morally dubious. Solid episode. Solid episode. I would recommend checking that one out, too. I think that's my number 4 pick, maybe? And then we get Armored Core. It was interesting. From what I've seen, it's similar enough to the games to be, you know, faithful. I don't know, though. I've never played Armored Core, and I haven't watched much gameplay. So, you know, Armored Core fans, feel free to correct me. Yeah, it was delightfully simple, and it had a pretty good twist at the end, showing that our protagonist might, you know, as lonely as he is, he might actually prefer that. You know, so much so that he might even be the twist villain. You know, who knows? So yeah, it's yeah, some pretty good shorts in there, some pretty good animated shorts in there, and some of which are even very faithful to the games they're based on, and even some of the ones that aren't are still pretty solid. But there are some stinkers in there, so yeah, no. I would recommend checking out at least the first half of Secret Level. And it's a short watch. You can watch the whole thing in, like, oh god, what was it? Like, 2.5 hours, something like that. So yeah, go check it out, and have yourselves a nice day. I'll see you in the next one.